Hey, so I want to talk about some of the philosophies that came out of the Industrial Revolution. So, what's happening is that people are responding to the difficulties and the advantages of the Industrial Revolution with different ideas. They're concerned about the poverty, they're concerned about the distribution of wealth, they're concerned about the living conditions and the working conditions for people. And they responded to this with a whole bunch of different new ideas. So, an example, one of the earliest responses came from a group of people who were professional weavers. So, in England, a professional weaver was someone who made really high quality product, who was very skilled at their job. And this is before the Industrial Revolution, so they're using manual looms. And because of their skills, they were able to go around and hire themselves out to the wealthier of the farming community to make fabric from those folks' wool. And that provided a pretty good lifestyle and a very high quality product, which was also pretty rare and very much in demand. When the Industrial Revolution happened and people started making cloth out of machines, this put the weavers out of business. They couldn't get high wages working in the factories. The product in their mind was inferior, and they're probably right. And so they saw that the machines were destroying their lifestyle. And their response was to riot, to work in groups, to go into factories, to destroy the machines and sabotage them in an effort to stop the Industrial Revolution from advancing. They were arrested, they were put on trial, they were sentenced to death. And when they were arrested, the weavers would say, "Oh, our leader is not here. You didn't arrest our leader. Our leader is Ned Ludd." Probably a fictional person that they sort of made up on the spot, kind of like Robin Hood or something like that. And so their movement became known as the Luddite movement. And today we use the word Luddite to refer to people who don't like machinery, and which is all of us. At some point in time, you've thought that this computer, this car is not making my life better. I hate machines. Then you were in that moment a Luddite. And it also stands for the bigger question we still have in society about whether machines are actually making our life better, and whether working people will ever be replaced by machines or whether it will actually just benefit us. A very different kind of reaction came from folks like Robert Owen. Robert Owen was also working in the factories and experienced very harsh conditions and a lot of abuse. But he was able to marry rich and in that way to open up his own factory. And he decided that he would model a philosophy of taking care of the workers to produce a better product. So in his factory, the workers cooperated with him, the owner, to produce a very high quality product under very excellent working conditions. They created childcare centers and schools and recreational facilities for the workers and high quality housing that was part of the factory complex. And this is the factory that he built called New Lanark in Britain. And the result was a very high quality product that sold very well and it made a lot of profit for the community. Around England, other people made similar kinds of businesses where all the workers were cooperating together. It's called a cooperative. And so the cooperative movement lasts to this day. Another lasting idea that came out of this time was the idea that unions are good for both workers and factory owners. That's what Robert Owen believed. Herbert Spencer is the leader of a philosophical school that came out of this time called social Darwinism. And in the United States, it was called eugenics. So just to be clear, Charles Darwin is a scientist who developed the theory of evolution, and that is a science. We know that evolution happens among animals. But Herbert Spencer tried unscientifically to apply the idea of evolution to humans. And his logic went sort of like this. If survival of the fittest is happening among humans, then clearly rich people must be the most fit because they are surviving the best. So there must be something about rich people genetically that makes them smarter and better and more suited to the conditions, and that is why they are rich. And by extension, that means that if you are poor, there must be something wrong with you intellectually, genetically, and that it is your inferior genes that are causing you to be poor. So you can understand that this is like really not scientific and sounds kind of crazy in its pure form. But I want you to understand that social Darwinism is a very popular idea today. So when you hear people saying something like welfare just causes people to be lazy and we shouldn't give it to people because it encourages them to have more children and create more welfare dependent people, that is social Darwinism. So it's all around us, even though it may seem like it doesn't make sense in the abstract. And it's certainly not a science, but a philosophy. A very different kind of approach came from the school of utilitarianism. An example of that would be Jane Addams, who's considered to be the founder of the concept of social work. So the argument that Jane Addams and her colleagues are making is that poverty is a phenomenon that happens because people have a lack of access to resources. So if they lack housing, they lack education, they lack childcare, they lack medical care, then folks can be unable to work and unable to produce and to contribute to society. So what we need to do is fix those shortages, and then the community can be whole again. So Jane Addams founded a settlement house called Hull House, and there were many of them established around this time in modeling after her work. And in that building, there were childcare centers, there was cafeteria, there was education and training for people, job training, and recreation. And the idea was that anyone who was unable to find work could come there and get support to be a better worker. In particular, she was serving women and new immigrants and helping them to get what they needed to become part of the workforce. Adam Smith was back in England, and his philosophy comes out of observing the factories. So he took a close look at what was going on in the successful factories, and he said, you know, what I see here is something called specialization. Each worker is doing one specific task, and by having them only concentrate on that one tiny task, we could speed up the process of producing products and make better products for less money. And so what's happening, what's driving this specialization is competition. Factories are trying to get a share of the market. They're trying to produce a better product. And in the process, they're making better products for everyone. So clearly, society is advancing because of this innovation. So his idea was that ultimately, this kind of competition between factory owners was going to produce, for profits, was going to produce a better society for everyone without any outside interference, just because of the profit motive, which he called the invisible hand. So his idea was that government should laissez-faire. It's a French word that means leave it alone. Let the factory owners compete amongst each other and do whatever they need to do. Don't try to tell them how to run their business, especially don't try to tell them how to pay their workers or things like that, because that will only stop them from competing and then hurt everyone by failing to create such excellent products. Karl Marx actually built on the work of Adam Smith to say, okay, so that's right. Capitalism is creating all this innovation, and that's true. But I also notice this other thing, which is that as the profits go up, the profits go to the owners of the factory because of their ownership of the machines, and they have more power, and they're able to take a bigger part of the profits for themselves and pay the workers very little. And yet the workers are creating all of this wealth with their work. So ultimately, there are many more workers than owners. The workers are going to see that they're being used in this way and revolt. It only makes sense. And what will they want when they achieve a revolution? They will want to control the factories and share the wealth of the factories. And so he imagined a second stage after capitalism in which people share the wealth, and a workers' government acts to share that wealth. And then finally, a stage he called communism, where people would begin to share naturally and would not need a government to tell them what to do. So Marx is a philosopher and he's writing this stuff in a book. He did not actually run a revolution. What we see happening later when revolutions really happen that tried to model themselves after Marx is that it's quite a bit more complicated to do all this, and that natural stage of communism does not seem to arise. So that's something we'll talk about in history, but this is the philosophy that gets that started. More recently, an economic philosopher by the name of Amartya Sen did some research on the Bengal famine in India. So the Bengal famine happened in the middle of World War II, and it happened in a time when England and other countries were doing fine, but their control over Bengal did not extend to helping the people in Bengal to survive this famine. So Amartya Sen concludes that capitalism by itself does not benefit all people because some people have less power in the political system. The result will be that capitalism will leave them behind and leave them to starve in extreme cases. So, what needs to happen for capitalism to really help society is there to be more freedom and more democracy so that people have the kind of power that they would need to call down resources when they're in trouble. So if, for example, the people of Bengal had been truly equal to the people of England, then they would have been able to access all the resources that England had, and no one would have needed to die. But it's the lack of relative power between the people in Bengal and the people at home in the controlling country of England that created the famine. So something to think about is the connection between the economic system and the political system. And with that, I'll let you do some extra reading.